Hi there, you're watching us right here on Bernama today. Now, with Merdeka just around the corner, we take stock of what has happened in the country. We're looking back at history as well. And we take this opportunity to speak to two very special guests about the plight and tragedy that is the Siam-Burma Death Railway. I'm joined by the descendants of the survivors of the incident, Mr. Chandrasekaran, the chairman of the Death Railway Interest Group, as well as Vimalan, Gunushakran, the committee member of the Death Railway Interest Group. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Perhaps you can start by telling us a little bit about some of the efforts of the Interest Group and what are your current plans for this year?
All right. You see, we in the process of researching this subject, we came to realize that more than 100,000 Malayans had died building this railway. And when we searched the public domain for information on this, we found that there was hardly anything. And most of the information on the Death Railway seemed to be information on the prisoners of war who helped build the Death Railway. But when we know that there was an overwhelming majority of Asians and there was hardly any information on them, that's when we thought, why don't we start gathering the information ourselves? So we started with our circle of family, friends and so on, and then it expanded. And when we searched, what we find is that whatever relief effort that was done after the war when these victims were coming back to Malaysia, you see, it was not done on a national scale, because at that time in the 1940s, Malaysia was not a nation, you see, and most of its population were actually migrant population. So the Malay victims who were coming back were looked after Malay organizations. Similarly, the Chinese who came back were looked after the Chinese clan associations, and the Indians who came back were looked after by the Indian association. So they don't interact with each other. So we don't know, we don't get the overall picture. Right. What is the total number of Malayans who went? We don't have any information on that.
But we know that there were many.
Yes, we know that there were many. And you see, among the Malayans, it was easy to pick out workers from the estates. You could go to the estates and just take as many laborers as you like, you know. So the majority of victims from Malaya were actually the Indians from the estates.
So, well, your grandfather was amongst one of them.
Yes, Jesse. He was a 17-year-old, actually a teenager. He was taken away by the Japanese from Alagar estate. This is an estate in Bruas in Perak. So he was taken away, and then when he was taken away to the Death Railway, and there was no news about him until about 1-2 years later, where my grandmother asked around those people who came back, who made it back alive from the Death Railway, and they told that he actually died, but we don't know where exactly he died and how he died. So it's a very tragic issue, and it has happened to many families. And my late grandmother, till her death last year, kept talking about it. You know, I don't know how my brother, what happened to him. You know, we don't even have a picture of him. You know, he was so young and he was taken away in the 40s.
That's right. So you'll be having an event coming up in the next couple of days as well. What exactly would you like to achieve or try and reach with this particular event in hand?
Okay, you see, for most people, this event is something that happened so long ago, and as though it happened so far away, and they are very detached from it. But what we are trying to do is bring home the point that the people who were building this railway, they were people who lived in our time. So we still have a few survivors in their 90s, you know. So we are getting one such survivor who is able to recollect quite vividly his experience on the Death Railway. He's 90 years old now.
90 years old. That's amazing.
When I first saw him, he was a very fit, healthy man, but now he's already on a walking stick. So we have to quickly document his story as much as we can. We have already started doing that from last year.
And how much do you know already in the past 1 year? How much have you collected and documented?
How much? Well, how do I assess that? Well, what I can say is that we have documented about half the survivors whom we have met. There are still about 5 or 6 more that have yet to be documented, simply because they are not very accessible, you know. They are not in KL. And sometimes their health is not very stable. When we make the arrangement, then suddenly they say they are not well, so we got to postpone it until they get better. And when they are better, you see, the thing is, we don't have professional people with us who can come on short notice. When they say, okay, you can come this weekend, the people who are coming to do the recording, they're doing it on a voluntary basis, and they may not be free.
So it is, of course, an uphill task as
exactly.
well to get all the to pull the information and
exactly.
And
so unless
together.
we have a budget where we can pay people to come at the time when we require them, that is not possible. So that's why we are taking some time.
That's right. What is your personal take on all of this? What has happened, and as the chairman of the interest group moving forward?
Okay, what I see is that we have somehow let these people down. I think that they are Malayans, or they were Malayans then, they are Malaysians now, citizens of this country, and I think a grave injustice has been done to them, because they were snatched away from their villages, from their estates, wherever they may be. Although some may have gone on the promise of lucrative job offers, but they did not have the option of coming back when they found that things were not as it was promised. So it was basically forced labor, even if they had gone willingly. But their tenure for the 3 years, it was more or less, I would say, forced labor.
All right, and the death railway is still very much there today.
Yes,
it is
there.
present.
Yes.
In fact, you were saying that you've been on it as well.
Yes, yes.
Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Okay, you see, when I wanted to go to the death railway, I wanted to retrace the steps taken by the original group of workers. Since I learned that they were taken by train, so I took a train ride from Kuala Lumpur all the way to the station where they got off in Banpong.
And this is this picture that's on the screen right now?
This one is at the Burmese end of the line.
I see. The other end.
The other end. You see, there are two ends to the line.
Right.
One is in Nong Pladok, Thailand, and the other is the Burmese end. And very few people have ventured into the Burmese side. Very few people had ventured to the Burmese side. The most you can go is up to the border, and then beyond that they don't allow you to go. Although it's a short distance, so they ask you to go back to Bangkok and fly into Rangoon. So I didn't do that. I came back to Malaysia and then took another flight to Rangoon and then found my way back there.
That's right. Once everything had happened, was there an apology from the Japanese government or any other government?
Well, you see, even in the apology, they don't seem to recognize the existence of Asians. You see, they don't make a direct apology for the death railway, but what they do say, just about 2 years ago, it was the 70th anniversary of the completion of the death railway. I think it was 2015, I think. The Japanese Prime Minister, in his speech, had apologized for the cruelty of the Japanese army towards the prisoners of war.
Right,
okay.
But not specifically.
Not specifically, but you see, when you say about the cruelty to the prisoners of war, what are they talking about? I mean, the Japanese didn't ill-treat them just anywhere. Of course, he was referring to the cruelty that the POW suffered at the death railway. But he makes no mention of the Asian workers, as though they don't exist.
That's the sad part, because over 100,000 people died, and there's no, admission of guilt or any recognition or anything that is taken towards those people who died. Because the POWs was in a small amount. It's a fraction of the survivors. Fraction of those people who died there. So it's a bit disappointing. Yes.
What hurts you most to know that you have loved ones who were lost in this particular incident?
Well, what hurts us most, you see, I was fortunate in that my father survived and came back. He told us a little bit about what he had gone through. And one story that vividly I can recollect is that, you see, he was a locomotive assistant. He was on the locomotive when the driver was away. So it was not his job to drive the train. He was just supposed to be putting coal in.
Right.
But he was assigned to just move it a little bit. So with them, when they were unloading some goods from the trains, and then he was asked to move it back and forth. So while he was moving, he heard a very strange noise coming from under. So he stopped the locomotive, went down, and he found that he had actually run over somebody.
Right.
All right. So that person actually had committed suicide. He put his neck on the track, and the train had just gone over, and he saw a decapitated body.
Right.
So
and this was a story your dad has related to.
Yes, he related many stories, but I don't remember them all. At the time, I had not bothered to record. But this one story stuck in my mind because, you see, the Japanese had taken young, able-bodied men All right, and for this young man to resort to suicide, it tells us that the conditions must have been really horrible, really hopeless. They didn't even attempt to escape. They went to suicide. So the conditions there must have been unimaginable.
That's
so
right.
This is something that kept going on in my mind.
That's right. It's a hard image to get it out of your head. You, as someone who's a bit, of course, from generation that's a little bit younger, how do you feel about what has happened and moving forward? What would you like to say to inspire or to send that message across to your peers that look, we have history behind us and we need to be more enthusiastic about the nation?
Definitely, I'm very, very upset with what happened, because I took the trip as well about 3 weeks ago. I went with my dad and we retraced back the step up to the border of Myanmar, and it was really tragic. Because
what emotions did you go through during that trail?
When I got down in Banpong through the station, I had goosebumps, because this was the site where it began the construction of the death railway. So I had goosebumps and very upset and sad. Yeah, but for moving forward, for the next generation, that's why we are doing all these programs, and especially the talk in UM in the 26th, right? To raise awareness among the youngsters as well. We would like them to know, this happened 75 years ago, and then despite, okay, yes, it happened 75 years ago, but yes, you can learn a lot of things from it. And also history, it teaches a lot of things. So we want them to come and join us as well. We need volunteers, we need people who can help us to do research and everything. We need that. Yes.
Okay, so here's a call out to all our viewers watching to be part of this initiative and efforts. There's an event that's also coming up in the next couple of days. Tell us about that.
Okay. As I mentioned, the 90-year-old survivor, okay, you see, I think we have actually waited too long to do this program. It's coming late, but better late than never.
That's right.
All right, this man lives in Rantau, Linggi, Negeri Sembilan, and we found that he had a very interesting story to tell, and his story is slightly different in that he had picked up some Japanese and English prior to being taken to Thailand. So on his way to Thailand, he conversed in Japanese to one of the Japanese soldiers. So they found that they could use him as an interpreter.
Right.
So he was quite lucky. So
he was spared.
He was spared the ordeal that the normal workers would have gone through.
Looking at this year, 2017, 60 years of Merdeka. As a parting note, what would you like to say based on this particular event?
Okay. What I want to say is that we have to realize that the bulk of the victims were actually from Malaya, and not only that, Malaya had a very important role in that railway, because not only was the manpower primarily sourced from Malaya, but also much of the railway's rolling stock. Many of the railway tracks were dismantled from here and laid on the death railway. So we have a lot to do with the death railway, and we don't seem to realize that. So we have to take ownership of our role on the death railway.
That's right. Well, for more information, you can of course log on to one of your social media platforms on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Death Railway Interest Group, to get more information, of course, about the event that's coming up as well. Thank you so much for being in the studio and sharing your story with us.
Mention the date.
That's right. It's happening
this Saturday.
This Saturday. That's right.
This Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m.
That's right. We had the slide come on just now, so our viewers would have seen that. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll catch you next time, same place. Don't go anywhere. Have a wonderful day ahead. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.